Hey guys, tonight, let's drift away from our world of glowing screens and scheduled alerts. We're going somewhere else. Not the Egypt of golden sarcophagi and Hollywood blockbusters, but a place far more real, more intimate. We're journeying to the banks of the Nile around 1250 BCE, during the height of the New Kingdom, a time when gods walked in the minds of mortals, and the lines between magic, medicine, and reality were beautifully, and sometimes terrifyingly, blurred. Forget what you think you know from the museums. We're here to feel the sun on our skin, to smell the silt of the river, and to understand why the ancients might have gotten higher, in more ways than one than you could ever believe. So, find that comfortable spot, let your breathing slow down, and let's travel back together. Congratulations, you've just woken up. There was no gentle alarm, no buzzing phone, just a subtle shift in the light filtering through a high, narrow slit in the wall. The first thing you notice isn't a sight, but a smell. It's a thick, complex bouquet that your modern nose would struggle to unpack. There's the damp, earthy scent of the Nile itself, a smell of life and fertility that clings to everything. Woven into it is the sharp, savory aroma of yeast from the communal bakery down the lane, where dough for the day's bread is already rising. Underneath it all is a warmer, slightly pungent smell of livestock, the goat, tethered just outside your door, perhaps a few chickens scrabbling in the dust. This isn't an unpleasant smell. It's the smell of life, the smell of your entire world, contained in a single breath. You lie on a reed mat, laid directly upon the hard-packed earthen floor. There's no mattress, no memory foam, just the rustle of dried plants beneath you. A clay headrest, cool against your neck, serves as your pillow. It sounds uncomfortable, and it is. But it's also practical. It keeps your head elevated from any scorpions or insects that might be exploring the floor at night. The air in your one-room mud-brick house is already warm and close. Sunlight, thick with dancing dust motes, paints a single brilliant stripe across the far wall. You share this space with your entire family. Privacy is a concept that doesn't exist here. Your parents, your siblings, maybe an aunt or an uncle, all sleep within arm's reach. Their soft breathing is the only sound in the room, a gentle rhythm against the backdrop of the waking world outside. You can hear the village slowly coming to life. A dog barks somewhere down the narrow, winding lane. You hear the low voices of women, the rhythmic thump-thump of someone grinding grain with a stone pestle. It's a gentle, organic start to the day, dictated not by a clock, but by the sun itself. Their concept of time is fluid, cyclical, measured in seasons of inundation, planting, and harvest, not in minutes and seconds. It's a pace of life that feels both alien and deeply primally resonant. Thinking about time in our world versus theirs is a strange exercise. We measure our lives in digital precision, every second accounted for. They measured theirs by the reliable, eternal cycles of nature. It makes you wonder, as a little experiment, and to help me know who's on this journey with me tonight. Take a moment and just drop a comment below with where in the world you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. It's fascinating to think of us all, scattered across the globe in our own time zones, meeting here in this single, shared moment in ancient Egypt. It's a little bit of our own modern magic, isn't it? You decide to linger for a moment longer on your mat, enjoying the relative cool before the sun truly begins its assault. You roll over, the reed mat crackling softly beneath you, and there she is, your wife. She sleeps soundly, her dark hair fanned out against the simple linen sheet covering her. In your world, marriage is a complex affair of romance, dating apps, and elaborate ceremonies. Here, it is both simpler and, in some ways, more pragmatic. You likely married young, an arrangement made between your families. But that doesn't mean there's no love. The love poems of your time are some of the most beautiful ever written, filled with breathless longing and tender affection. My heart is not accustomed to leaving you, one might read, "If I see my beloved, I will make my prayers to the goddess." Your marriage isn't just a social bond. It's a practical partnership, formalized by a document that would astonish most people from the future. It's a marriage contract, a sank, which literally means life giver. This mainstream historical fact is a window into the soul of your society. This contract isn't about flowery promises. It's a list of the property and assets she brought into the mirage: a few linens, some cooking pots, maybe a small goat, and the contract explicitly states that all of it remains hers. If you were to divorce or leave her, you would have to compensate her, often paying back the value of her initial dowry, plus a penalty. Women in your time have rights that women in other parts of the world wouldn't see for another 3,000 years. They can own land, run businesses, and inherit property. It's a society that, for all its strangeness, holds a surprising degree of respect for the female half of the population. Of course, that doesn't mean relationships are without their anxieties. This is where a quirky tidbit of your culture comes. And if you were worried about her fidelity, or if a rival was trying to steal her affections, you wouldn't resort to arguments. You might go see the local magician, who is often also the local doctor. For a small fee, a few jugs of beer, or a basket of dates, he could create a love charm, or, more sinisterly, a curse. You might get a small clay figurine, shaped vaguely like your rival. The magician would write his name on it, perhaps with a spell invoking a fearsome god like Seth, the god of chaos. Then, you would be instructed to break it, or bury it, or even burn it, believing that this symbolic act would have a real-world effect. Historians still argue whether the average Egyptian truly believed these magical acts had direct power, or if they were more of a psychological release, a way of managing intense emotions in a world with few other outlets. Either way, the belief in Heka, or magic, is as fundamental to your world as the Nile itself. It's the unseen force that binds everything together. Your relationship with your wife is the central pillar of your existence. The ideal is a harmonious household, filled with children who will honor you after you've passed into the West. Your first priority, however, isn't the beer, it's the water. A short walk down the lane brings you to the communal well, or perhaps you just use a large clay jar of water your mother or wife fetched from the Nile at dawn. There is no running water, no shower, no gleaming porcelain sink. Your bathroom is a simple copper basin set on a wooden stand just outside your door. You pour some of the water into it. It isn't perfectly clear. It carries the faint, cloudy signature of the river. Tiny particles of the life-giving silt that defines your entire existence. You have no soap. Soap, as you would know it, hasn't been invented. Instead, you might use a block of natron, a naturally occurring mix of sodium carbonate and sodium bicarbonate harvested from the dry lake beds. It's a harsh, salty cleanser, good for scouring pots and also, apparently, human skin, or perhaps you use castor oil to dissolve the grime before scraping it off with a curved wooden tool called a strigil. You splash the water on your face, rubbing your eyes. It's cool and refreshing against the already building heat of the morning. This is your moment of private ritual, a cleansing that is both physical and symbolic. You wash away the sleep, the dreams of the night, and prepare to present a proper face to the world and to the gods. Cleanliness, Abu, is next to godliness. It is a marker of civilization, of a person living in mat or divine order. Priests in the great temples undergo extensive purification rituals, washing multiple times a day, while your ablutions are far simpler. They are born of the same impulse, to be clean and pure in a world teeming with potential chaos. You dry your face with a small square of linen, the fabric rough against your skin. And now, the most important part of your morning routine begins. It's time for your makeup. In your future, makeup will be seen largely as a feminine pursuit, a tool of vanity or self-expression. For you, It is something far more profound. It is armor. It is magic. It is medicine. You retreat into the relative shade of your home's doorway, where your wife has already laid out the tools. It's a humble kit compared to what a noble would own, but the essentials are there. There is a small flat slate palette, worn smooth with years of use. There is a lump of dark, metallic mineral galena, a lead sulfide, or brought from the mines in the eastern desert. There is a small pot of animal fat or vegetable oil, and a slender applicator stick carved from wood or bone. You take the lump of galena and begin to grind it on the palette with a small, smooth stone. The process is slow, deliberate. It creates a fine, shimmering, dark gray powder. You scrape the powder into a small indentation on the palette and add a tiny drop of oil, mixing it into a thick, smooth paste. This is Mestemet, the famous coal. Your wife might do the same, perhaps adding a bit of crushed malachite to a different pot to create the vibrant green eyeshadow, waju, that was popular in earlier times. But for today, you both will wear the classic, dramatic black. You take the applicator stick, dip it in the coal, and bring it to your eye. There is no mirror. You do this by feel, a skill learned in early childhood. You draw a thick almond-shaped line around your entire eye, extending it outwards towards your temple in a graceful sweep. The line is bold and definite. It is not a suggestion of a shadow, but a declaration. Your wife does the same. When you are done, your eyes are transformed. They seem larger, more intense, and are starkly defined against your sun-darkened skin. You look at each other, and there is a shared understanding. You are now ready. You are protected. This isn't just about looking good. This is a mainstream, historical fact that modern science has only recently begun to understand. First, the coal serves a practical, medicinal purpose. The dark line, with your magical armor in place, you are now ready for sustenance. Your path takes you back inside the cool darkness of your home, where the morning meal is being prepared. Forget any image of a quiet, personal breakfast. This is a communal, family affair. The concept of a breakfast nook is about 3.5 millennia away. You gather with your family, sitting on the floor or on low stools around a shared mat where the food is placed. The air is filled with the simple, satisfying aromas of life, the yeasty temps of beer, and the wholesome smell of baking bread. You reach for your breakfast bowl. It's a simple, wide-mouthed clay vessel, perfect for what you're about to receive. Your wife or mother takes a large dipper and scoops your meal from a massive pottery vat stored in the corner of the room, a vessel that is constantly being topped up. What she pours into your bowl is your breakfast, your lunch, your dinner, and your primary source of hydration. It is Henket beer. Let's be very clear. This is not the crisp, golden, filtered lager you might imagine. If a modern person were to taste it, they would be shocked. It's a thick, opaque, porridge-like slurry, closer in consistency to a thin oatmeal or a watery stew. It is cloudy, slightly sour, and filled with floating bits of grain and yeast. You don't sip this from a glass. You drink it from the bowl, or more commonly, you use a long reed straw. Your straw might even have a small, woven mesh filter at the end. A clever piece of personal technology, designed specifically to keep you from getting a mouthful of the sediment and solids that collect at the bottom. To a modern palate, it might seem unappealing. To you, it is the taste of life itself, and you start your day with it for the most critical of reasons: survival. The Great Nile, the source of all life in your land, is a paradox. Its waters fertilize your fields, but they can also be teeming with invisible enemies: bacteria, parasites like the schistosome worm, and contaminants from animal and human waste. Drinking directly from the river, or even from many wells, is a gamble. But the process of making beer, the boiling and, crucially, the fermentation kills the vast majority of these dangerous microbes. Your beer is far safer to drink than your water. This is the single most important mainstream historical fact of your diet. Everyone drinks it, from the mightiest pharaoh to the smallest child. Toddlers are weaned on a weaker, thinner version of this very same brew. It's not about indulgence or vice. It's a public health strategy, a matter of life and death, of course. This liquid bread is also a primary source of nutrition. The beer is made by crumbling partially baked loaves of emmer wheat or barley bread, which are rich in yeast, into a large vat of water. The mixture is left to ferment, releasing the grains, sugars, and creating alcohol. The resulting brew is packed with carbohydrates for energy, and more importantly, it's rich in proteins and essential B vitamins from the yeast, in a diet that often lacks variety. Beer provides the fuel you need to perform hours of hard physical labor under a blistering sun. It is your Gatorade, your protein shake, and your morning coffee all rolled into one thick, soupy meal. This leads to a fascinating scholarly debate. Just how alcoholic was this daily henket, and what effect did a lifetime of consuming it have on the Egyptian population? Historians argue over the exact alcoholic content. Most agree that the daily beer was likely a small beer, with a low alcohol percentage, perhaps around 2 to 3%. However, stronger versions were definitely brewed for festivals and celebrations, where getting drunk was seen as a way to commune with the gods. Did this mean the average Egyptian worker, from the farmer in the field to the stonecutter at the quarry, spent their entire life in a state of constant, mild intoxication? Some scholars argue yes, that this low-grade buzz was a social lubricant that made the hardships of life and the monotony of labor more bearable. Others contend that the nutritional and hydrating aspects were far more significant, and that people's tolerance would have been so high that the alcoholic effects were negligible. The truth is likely somewhere in the middle. You're not getting drunk at breakfast, but you are consuming something that calms the nerves and fuels the body in a way that plain water never could. Accompanying your beer is its solid counterpart, the bread. Again, you must discard any modern notions of a soft, fluffy loaf. Your bread is a dense, heavy, round flat bread, made from emmer wheat or barley. The flour is coarse, ground by hand between two stones, called a quern. This process is effective, but it has a significant, unavoidable side effect: grit. A surprising amount of sand from the desert and stone dust from the quern makes its way into the flour. This is a gritty, sandy bread, and it has a devastating effect on your teeth. Modern analysis of mummies consistently reveals teeth that are worn down, sometimes to the gum line, from a lifetime of chewing this abrasive bread. Dental abscesses were a common, and sometimes fatal, affliction. You might make a light joke about needing a jaw of iron to get through a loaf, but the reality is a constant, low-level pain in your mouth. You don't slice this bread. You tear off a rough hunk of it. It's your spoon, your plate, and your main course. You use it to scoop up anything else available, or, most commonly, you dip it directly into your beer, softening the hard crust and creating an even more substantial. The story of Isis and Osiris is more than just a comforting tale to help you sleep. It is the divine blueprint for the single most important purpose of your life: creating a family. The love between Isis and Osiris was powerful, but their story only reached its triumphant conclusion with the magical conception of their son, Horus. That act, the creation of an heir, is the central pillar of your entire existence. To you, a child, particularly a son, is everything. He is your staff of old age, the one who will care for you when you are frail. He is the one who will inherit your small plot of land and your tools, ensuring your family's name continues. Most importantly, he is your key to eternity. A mainstream historical fact of your religion is that your survival in the afterlife depends on the actions of the living. It is your eldest son's sacred duty to perform the opening of the mouth ceremony on your mummified body, a ritual that magically reanimates your senses, allowing you to eat, speak, and breathe in. The duat He is the one who must ensure your ku, or life force, receives the necessary food and drink offerings at your tomb. Without a son to perform these duties, you risk the second death, the terrifying prospect of fading into eternal nothingness, your name forgotten and your soul starved. The social and religious pressure to procreate is therefore immense. A fruitful marriage is a successful marriage. A childless one is a tragedy, and a common reason for a man to take a second wife or to divorce. But this divine directive to be fruitful and multiply exists in a world of practical limitations. Perhaps you already have 5 children, and another mouth to feed would stretch your meager resources to the breaking point. Perhaps your wife's health is frail, and another pregnancy would be dangerous. Or perhaps you simply wish for a moment of intimacy without the consequence of conception. In a world without modern gynecology, what are your options? Your solutions, found within medical texts like the Ebers Papyrus, are a fascinating mix of empirical observation, sympathetic magic, and what a modern person would consider sheer, stomach-turning weirdness. This is where you encounter a truly quirky tidbit of your culture, the crocodile dung pessary. If your wife wishes to avoid pregnancy, a physician-priest might prescribe a contraceptive paste. The primary ingredient is the dung of a crocodile, mixed with sour milk or fermented dough, and sometimes a little honey, to create a thick, malleable clump. She would be instructed to insert this into her vagina before intercourse. To your modern mind, this sounds not only repulsive, but dangerously unhygienic. But to you, the logic is sound, a blend of the magical and the practical. The crocodile is a creature of immense power, associated with the fearsome god Sobek, but also with the chaotic and famously sterile god Seth. By using the creature's dung, you are invoking its ferocious life-denying power. You are placing a magical barrier of sterility within the womb. It's this practice that fuels a lively scholarly debate. Was this just magical thinking, or did it actually work? Some medical historians argue that, coincidentally, it might have been partially effective. Crocodile dung is highly alkaline, and the sour milk or fermented dough would be acidic. The resulting chemical environment would be hostile to sperm, making it a crude but potentially functional spermicide. Others argue that its efficacy was likely minimal, and that any success was due more to the placebo effect or its function as a simple physical barrier. Alongside this method, there were others. A pessary, made of acacia gum and honey, is also prescribed. Modern science knows that acacia gum ferments into lactic acid, a chemical still used in some modern spermicidal jellies. Did you know this? Or did you just observe that women who used this concoction tended to have fewer children? You are an accidental scientist, blending magic with results-based evidence. Of course, the opposite problem in fertility was a much more common and desperate concern. If you and your wife were unable to conceive, you would use every tool at your disposal. You would pray to Toret, the fiercely protective goddess of childbirth. Section 5. The gentle, fragrant haze of the lotus wine has long since evaporated, dissolving like a dream upon waking. The morning sun, the very same celestial body you felt a divine connection to only hours before, is now your unforgiving taskmaster. There is no slow start to your day, no gentle easing into the morning. The brief respite of the festival is over, and the aches in your back and limbs, temporarily silenced by the flower's magic, return with a familiar, dull insistence. The brief glimpse of the field of reeds has vanished, replaced by the very real fields of black earth that demand your sweat and your strength. Your life is one of labor, a cycle dictated not by your desires, but by the great pulsing artery of your world, the River Nile. Your entire calendar, your very concept of a year, is built around the 3 seasons of the river. This is the mainstream, historical fact that underpins your whole existence. There is no weekend, no summer vacation, no concept of time off. There is only the work the season demands. First comes Akhet, the season of the inundation. Around the end of June, the river, begins to swell. Fed by the distant summer rains in the highlands of Ethiopia, the Nile slowly, inexorably, spills over its banks. It swallows the fields, covering the entire valley in a vast, shallow sea of murky, life-giving water. During these months, from roughly June to September, your primary work farming is impossible. The land you normally till is underwater. So, what do? You do not sit idle. This is the time of the corvée, the state-mandated labor owed by all able-bodied men to the pharaoh, who is the living embodiment of the god Horus and the owner of all the land in Egypt. An official ascribed from the local administration will arrive in your village and read from a papyrus scroll. Your name will be called. You are to report for duty. This is where a great scholarly debate rages. The massive monuments of your civilization, the pyramids, the great temples of Karnak, and Luxor were not built by whip-driven slaves, as later storytellers would claim. They were built by you, by free Egyptian men, paid in daily rations of bread, beer, onions, and dried fish. But is this labor truly free? Is it a form of civic duty, a tax paid with muscle and sweat instead of grain? Or is it a form of temporary, seasonal slavery, where the state has absolute power over your body and your time? You don't have the luxury of such philosophical debates. You simply go. You might be sent to the quarries at Torah or Aswan to help hew massive blocks of limestone or granite from the earth. You work in a team, under the watchful eye of an overseer. The work is organized, almost like a military campaign. You cut channels into the rock, hammer in wooden wedges, and then soak them with water. As the wood expands, it cracks the stone with immense force. Then comes the grueling work of shifting the multi-ton block onto a wooden sledge to be hauled to the river and loaded onto a barge. Or perhaps you are sent to the site of a new temple. There, you are part of a human machine, hauling ropes to raise colossal obelisks, or dragging stone blocks up massive earthen ramps to their place in a pylon wall. The work is brutally hard, and it is dangerous. A slipped rope or a cracked block can mean instant death. At night, you sleep in a temporary workers' village, a sprawling camp of mud brick huts. You eat your rations with thousands of other men from all over Egypt. It is a life of disciplined, exhausting toil, all for the glory of a god-king you will likely never see. Then, as the waters begin to recede around October, the season changes. To Pare, the season of growing. You are released from your state service and return to your village. The land has re-emerged from the water, now coated in a fresh, thick layer of incredibly fertile black silt. This is the gift of the Nile, the foundation of your entire agricultural wealth. Now, the work is for your own survival. You and your family head to your allotted plot of land. Your first task is to break up the soil with a simple wooden plow, maybe pulled by a pair of placid oxen if you are fortunate. If not, your sons or even you yourself will pull it. Then, you walk the fields, a large basket of seed summer wheat, or barley slung over your shoulder, broadcasting the grain with a rhythmic sweep of your arm. Once the seeds are sown, the most relentless task begins: irrigation. While the silt is moist, the sun is powerful, and the young crops need constant water. This is where a quirky but vital tidbit of your technology comes into play: the shadoof. This ingenious device is a long wooden pole balanced on a central pillar. On one end hangs a leather or clay bucket on a rope. On the other is a heavy counterweight made of a large lump of dried mud and rocks. You stand on the bank of an irrigation canal. You pull the pole down, the counterweight rising high in the air, and dip the bucket into the water. Then, you simply guide the pole as the counterweight does the heavy lifting, raising the full, dripping bucket. With a gentle push, you swing the arm over your field and empty the water into a small channel that feeds the thirsty crops. You do this all day. Pull down, dip, guide up, swing, and empty. It is a slow, monotonous, back-straining dance that you perform from sunrise to sunset. It is the only way to keep your crops and your family alive. Finally, around March, the crops stand tall and golden in the fields. Shemu has arrived, the season of harvest. This is the most intense and urgent time of the year. Every able-bodied person in the village is mobilized. You and your family work side by side in the searing heat. You move through the wheat, grabbing handfuls of stalks and cutting them with a short, curved wooden sickle studded with razor-sharp flint blades. The work is fast-paced and frantic. You must get the harvest in before it overripens, or pests destroy it. The cut grain is then carried in large baskets to a communal threshing floor, a patch of hard-packed earth. The stalks are spread out, and oxen or donkeys are driven around and around in a circle to trample them, their hooves breaking the heads of grain away from the stalk. After that comes winnowing. You use large, flat wooden scoops to toss the mixture of grain and chaff into the air. The afternoon breeze, a welcome relief, carries away the lighter, useless chaff, while the heavier, precious kernels of grain fall back to the floor. It is a dusty, sweaty, exhausting process that fills the air, your throat, and your lungs with fine particles. After weeks of this intense labor, you have a pile of grain. This is the culmination of your entire year's work. It is your wealth, your food, your security. And now comes the part you dread the most. The scribe arrives. He is an agent of the state, an extension of the pharaoh's will, and he is here to collect his master's due. He is usually accompanied by official grain measurers and sometimes a few intimidating guards armed with heavy sticks. He unrolls his papyrus, consults his records, and directs the measurement of your harvest. There is no appeal, no argument. A hefty portion, often as much as half, is calculated as the state's tax. You watch as your hard-won grain is scooped into sacks and hauled away to the massive state granaries, the central storehouses that feed the army, the court, and the legions of priests and officials. You are left with what remains, hopefully, enough to feed your family, brew your beer, and provide seed for the next season. You stand weary, looking at your empty, sun-baked fields. The cycle is complete. Your labor has fed your family and fueled the immense, glittering machine of the Egyptian kingdom. Soon, the river will begin to rise again, and it will all start over. Section 6. The grain is in the granary. The state has taken its share, and a temporary quiet has fallen over the land. In these evenings, after the final meal of the day, your family gathers in the single room of your home. The oil lamps are lit, casting a warm, flickering glow that makes the shadows dance. This is the time for stories. It is your grandfather, his face a roadmap of wrinkles carved by decades under the Egyptian sun, who tells them. His voice is a low, comforting rumble, a familiar sound that has been the backdrop to your entire life. You've heard this story 100 times, but you lean in, captivated as always, because he is not just telling a story. He is explaining the world. He is telling you the great and terrible story of the gods, the myth that forms the very bedrock of your faith, your culture, and your hope for eternity. He is telling you of the great king, Osiris. His story begins in the Golden Age, the Zep Tepi, or first time, when the gods walked the earth and ruled as its kings. The great-grandson of the sun god Ra himself, Osiris, reigned as the first pharaoh. He was a kind and wise ruler. He taught your ancestors how to cultivate the land, how to brew beer and bake bread. He gave them laws and taught them to worship the gods. Beside him ruled his sister wife, the beautiful and brilliant Isis, a goddess whose knowledge of magic was greater than that of all other gods combined. Under their rule, Egypt was a paradise. There was no death, no hardship, no unjust suffering. It was a world of perfect mat, of divine order and balance. But, your grandfather says, his voice dropping lower, paradise had a shadow, and that shadow was their own brother, Seth. Seth was the lord of the red desert that bordered your fertile black land. He was the god of chaos, storms, violence, and foreigners, everything that your orderly society feared. He was strong and wild, but his heart was consumed by a bitter jealousy. He coveted his brother's throne, and he lusted after his brother's wife. This was the ultimate sibling rivalry, a cosmic jealousy that would shatter the peace of the world and introduce death. Into creation, Seth devised a treacherous plan. He hosted a magnificent feast for the gods, a party so lavish that all were in attendance. The highlight of the evening was a beautiful chest, an ornate sarcophagus crafted from the finest cedar and inlaid with gold and silver. Seth announced, with a magnanimous smile, that he would gift this masterpiece to whichever god fit inside it most perfectly. One by one, the guests tried. One was too tall, another too broad, none fit. Then, with a sly word of encouragement, Seth invited his brother Osiris to try. Osiris, noble and unsuspecting, obliged. He lay down in the chest, and it was a perfect fit, as if made for him alone. The moment he was inside, Seth's friendly demeanor vanished. He and his 72 co-conspirators slammed the heavy lid shut, sealing it fast. They hammered it with nails and poured molten lead over the seams, ensuring there was no escape. Then, with a great heave, they carried the chest to the banks of the Nile and flung it into the current. The river that gave you life became the coffin of the world's greatest king. As the chest floated away towards the sea, a great cry of mourning was heard across the land, and the golden age came to a violent end. Here, your grandfather's story turns to its true hero, Isis. When she learned of her husband's fate, her grief was so immense that her shriek was said to be sharper than any knife. She tore at her fine linen robes, cast dust upon her hair, and began a desperate, frantic search. She was no longer just a queen. She was a widow on a mission, the divine detective. Her quest took her all over the known world, following rumors and whispers. She finally learned that the chest had washed ashore in the distant land of Byblos. The currents had carried it to the base of a beautiful tamarisk tree, which, in a miracle, grew at a tremendous rate, completely encasing the sarcophagus within its trunk. The local king, marveling at the magnificent tree, had it cut down and made into a central pillar for his palace. Unaware of the divine secret it held, Isis traveled to Byblos and through her cunning in magic, befriended the queen and became a nursemaid to the infant prince. She eventually revealed her divine nature and her quest, and the shocked but awed king gave her the pillar. She cut it open and at last recovered the body of her beloved husband. She brought Osiris back to Egypt, hiding his body in the dense, secret marshes of the Nile Delta. But the story does not end there. One night, Seth, hunting by the light of the full moon, stumbled upon the hiding place. His rage knew no bounds. He fell upon his brother's lifeless body and, in a frenzy of hatred, dismembered it into 14 pieces, scattering them up and down the length of the Nile Valley to ensure Osiris could never be made whole again. The grief of Isis was reborn, now sharper and more desperate than ever. But grief did not defeat her. With her sister Nephthys by her side, she transformed herself into a kite, a small bird of prey, and they flew across all of Egypt, searching for the pieces of their murdered king. This part of the tale contains a quirky, almost gruesome tidbit that every Egyptian knows. They found 13 of the pieces. The last piece, the phallus, could not be found. It had been thrown into the Nile and eaten by an oxyrhynchus fish. From that day forward, that species of fish was considered taboo. an unclean thing that had committed a sacrilege against a god. Even this could not stop the great magician. Isis reassembled the 13 pieces of her husband's body. Then, using her divine power, she fashioned a replacement phallus out of gold and wax, or clay in some versions of the story. She wrapped her husband's body in linen strips, anointing him with oils and speaking words of power. In doing so, she created the very first mummy, establishing the sacred funerary rites that you, and everyone you know, hope to one day receive. Hovering over his body in the form of a bird, she fanned the breath of life back into him with her wings and, drawing upon his restored essence, she conceived a son, Horus, the heir and avenger. This mainstream historical fact of a myth is the key to your understanding of life, death, and kingship. Osiris, having been resurrected, could not remain in the land of the living. He descended into the underworld, the Duat, to become its eternal king. He is not a god of death, but the god of righteous life after death. His story is your promise. If you are judged to be worthy, you too can be reborn into his kingdom. His son Horus grew to manhood, challenged Seth, and after a series of epic battles, defeated the usurper and reclaimed the throne. Thus, every living pharaoh is the embodiment of Horus, and when he dies, he becomes an Osiris, ruling in the afterlife, while his son takes his place on earth as the new Horus. The cycle is eternal. Your grandfather's story also lies at the heart of a great, scholarly debate. Is this tale a purely Egyptian invention? A complex allegory for the agricultural cycle? Is Osiris the grain that is cut down and killed at harvest? Isis the fertile earth that guards the seed? And Seth the sterile desert that threatens it, only for the grain to be reborn as a new crop, Horus, in the next season? Or, as some comparative mythologists argue, is this story part of a larger family of dying Andressing god myths found throughout the ancient Near East and Mediterranean? Does Osiris share a common origin with the Babylonian Thamos or the Greek Adonis, suggesting a deep, prehistoric exchange of the most fundamental religious ideas? You do not know the answer. You only know the comfort the story brings. It tells you that, even in the face of the most horrific betrayal and chaos, order can be restored. It proves that love and devotion, like that of Isis, are stronger than death itself. It assures you that life does not end with your last breath. As you drift off to sleep, the last words of your grandfather's story echo in your mind. The chaos of Seth may win a battle, but the magic of Isis and the rightful order of Horus will always, always win the war. Your body is fueled by bread and beer, ready for the toil that defines your existence. But we will not dwell on the back-breaking labor of the Datha, hours spent casting seeds into the muddy fields under the watch of an overseer. The rhythmic swing of the sickle during harvest, or the hauling of water from the canals to irrigate the crops. The sun will cross the sky, its heat relentless, baking the mud brick walls of your village and turning the air into a shimmering haze. Your muscles will ache, your skin will be caked with a mixture of sweat and dust, and your mind will be dulled by the repetitive, exhausting rhythm of work. Instead, let's fast forward. The sun is now dying, bleeding purple and orange into the western sky over the Theban hills. The day's labor is done. You have returned to your village, washed the grime from your body in the cool waters of a canal and eaten your evening meal. More bread, more beer, perhaps some cooked lentils or a salted fish. A sense of weary satisfaction settles over you, but the day is not quite over. Tonight is not for collapsing onto your reed mat. Tonight is for a different kind of release, a pleasure that speaks to the soul as much as the body. Your neighbor is hosting a small gathering. You walk the few steps to his home, the air now filled with the scent of cooking fires and the gentle, rising fragrance of night-blooming flowers. Inside, the small room is lit by the flickering orange glow of a few simple oil lamps, casting dancing shadows on the walls. A few friends and family are gathered, their faces soft in the warm light. A musician in the corner gently plucks the strings of a small, harp-like instrument, the notes hanging in the air like dust motes. And everywhere you see it, the flower. It is woven into garlands, tucked behind the women's ears, and laid out on the small tables. Its image is painted on the very cups you will drink from. It is the blue lotus dot in the daylight. The Nymphea caerulea is a thing of astonishing beauty. It grows in the still, shallow waters of the canals and marshes, its roots deep in the fertile mud. Its petals are a vibrant, almost supernatural blue at the tips, fading to a pure white at the base, surrounding a sun-like burst of golden This flower is a central symbol of your entire world, a mainstream fact visible in every temple and tomb. It is the flower of creation itself. You know the stories. At the beginning of time, when there was only the dark, primordial ocean of none, a single, giant blue lotus flower rose from the depths. As its petals opened, it revealed the young sun god, Nefertum, the lord of perfume and creation. The flower's behavior is a daily miracle that echoes this cosmic birth. It opens its petals each morning to greet the sun and closes them each evening, sinking back beneath the water, only to be reborn again at dawn. For you, the lotus is the ultimate symbol of creation, rebirth, and the eternal promise of the sun. To hold one, to smell its intoxicatingly sweet, hypnotic perfume, is to hold a piece of the divine. But you and your friends know another secret about this sacred flower. It is a quirky, almost hidden tidbit of your culture, something rarely spoken of in official inscriptions, but depicted constantly in the joyful, intimate scenes painted on tomb walls. The lotus is not just a gift for the eyes and the nose. It is a gift for the mind. Your host smiles and offers you a cup of wine. The wine itself is thick and sweet, likely made from dates or pomegranates. But floating in the large jug from which it is poured are several closed and open blossoms of the blue lotus. They have been steeping in the wine for hours, and you know this simple act of infusion transforms the drink into something else entirely. This is the real reason for the gathering. This is how you shed the weight of the world. You take a long sip of the lotus wine. The taste is complex, the sweetness of the fruit wine overlaid with the floral, slightly bitter, perfumed flavor of the flower. You settle back on a mat as the musician continues to play. Within a few minutes, you begin to feel it. A gentle warmth starts in your stomach and spreads slowly through your limbs. The deep ache in your back and shoulders from the day's labor begins to dissolve, not just masked, but seemingly erased. A feeling of profound calm and well-being washes over you. The flickering lamplight seems a little brighter, the colors of the wall paintings a little more vivid. The notes from the harp seem to hang in the air a moment longer, each one a perfect, shimmering droplet of sound. This is the magic of the blue lotus. The flower contains two primary psychoactive alkaloids, apomorphine and nuciferine. Modern science identifies apomorphine as a dopamine agonist, which means it creates feelings of euphoria and well-being, while nuciferine is an antipsychotic-like compound that induces feelings of calmness and tranquility. The combination is a potent elixir for the weary soul. It is a gentle, dreamlike high. You don't feel out of control. Instead, you feel more present, more aware. The chatter of your friends sounds friendly and engaging, not irritating. Laughter comes easily. A sense of blissful contentment descends upon the small room. You are all sharing in this quiet euphoria, a collective release from the pressures of life. Here, in this simple act, lies a subject of fierce scholarly debate. Egyptologists and argue about the true nature of the lotus's use. The tomb paintings are undeniable. They are filled with scenes of parties and banquets, where men and women, dressed in fine linen, hold the flower to their noses, while others drink from cups. Servants are often shown pouring wine from jars, decorated with the lotus. The evidence for its use as a social drug seems overwhelming. But was it truly a common party drug for everyone, like you? Or were these tomb scenes an idealized representation, with the psychoactive use of the lotus reserved for a priestly elite? Some scholars argue that priests and shamans would use much more potent preparations, perhaps consuming the raw flowers, or creating powerful extracts, to induce deep trance states and prophetic visions, to speak with the gods. They suggest that the lotus-infused wine you are drinking now is a much milder, socially acceptable version, while the flower's true power was a closely guarded temple secret. You don't know or care about these future debates. You only know how it feels. You feel peaceful, untroubled. The constant, low-level anxiety of your existence, worries about the harvest, the river's flood level, the health of your children. The favor of the gods has receded into a soft, distant hum. You look at your wife, a lotus blossom tucked into her hair, and she smiles at you, her kohl-lined eyes seeming deep and mysterious in the lamplight. There is a sense of connection, of shared intimacy, that is heightened by the sacred flower. This is not seen as a sin. It is not an escape from reality that is frowned upon. It is a legitimate, even holy, way to experience a different state of being. The euphoria, the feeling of detachment from your physical body, is seen as a small taste of the afterlife, a glimpse into the blessed existence of the field of reeds, where the righteous dead live in eternal bliss. By consuming the flower of rebirth, you are symbolically partaking in that rebirth yourself. You are shedding your mortal skin for a few precious hours, and touching the hem of the divine. The night wears on. More wine is poured. Stories are told. The music weaves a hypnotic spell. The world outside your small lamplit room, the world of labor, of dirt, of danger, ceases to exist. There is only the warmth, the fragrance of the sacred flower, and the gentle euphoria that holds you in its embrace. You are high, higher than you could ever be on mere wine, and it feels like a blessing. Life in your world is fragile, a delicate balance easily upset. One day, while harvesting wheat in the field, the sharp flint edge of your sickle slips, cutting a deep gash in your leg. At first, it is just a simple wound. You wash it in the canal and wrap it with a strip of clean linen. But within a few days, the area around the cut becomes hot, swollen, and an angry red. A throbbing pain begins to radiate up your leg, and a foul-smelling fluid weeps from the gash. You are seized by a fever that leaves you shivering one moment and burning the next. This is not just an injury. This is a terrifying, supernatural assault. In a world without germ theory, you do not understand the concept of infection. You only know that something hostile has entered your body. Is it the vengeful ghost of a forgotten ancestor? Is it a demon that slipped past your protective amulets? Or is it the wrath of a god you have somehow offended? Fear, cold and sharp, grips you. This is a battle not just for your leg, but for your very soul. Your family does not hesitate. They send for the SWNW. SNOH, pronounced Suno, is the physician, but he is far more than that. He is a priest, a scribe, a magician, and a scientist all rolled into one. This mainstream historical fact of medical specialization means your village might have a general practitioner, but for a serious ailment, you might seek out a specialist from a nearby town, an eye doctor, a stomach specialist, or in your case, someone skilled in treating external wounds. When he arrives, he brings with him an aura of authority and knowledge. He is literate, part of an educated elite that has studied the ancient medical papyri, texts that are jealously guarded and considered to be of divine origin, perhaps written by the god Thoth himself. His examination is methodical. First, he assesses the physical. He looks closely at the wound, noting the color and the swelling. He may gently press the surrounding skin. He will smell the wound, as the odor can indicate the severity of the affliction. He might check the color of your eyes and skin and feel your forehead to gauge the fever. He will listen to your heart. Egyptian physicians understood that the heart was the center of a network of mechu, or channels, that carried air, tears, saliva, and blood throughout the body. But after the physical examination comes the true diagnosis, which is always spiritual. He might declare, "This is the work of a demon from the eastern lands, which has entered through this wound." Or he might say, "You have angered the warrior goddess Sekhmet, and her fiery breath now burns in your flesh." This is the heart of a great scholarly debate that continues to this day. Was the SNOA, rational scientist, forced to couch his findings in religious terms for his patients? Or was he a true believer who saw the physical symptoms as mere manifestations of a supernatural conflict? From your perspective, on the reed mat, there is no difference. A demon has taken root in your leg, and you need this man to drive it out. The treatment he prescribes is, therefore, twofold, a perfect blend of the practical and the magical. First, he will address the physical wound. He calls for a pot of honey. Honey, you know, is a powerful substance, a food of the gods. The SWNW knows it is a miraculous agent for treating wounds. He will smear it thickly over the gash. You don't know why it works, but he has seen the results. Modern science, of course, knows that honey is a natural antibiotic and antiseptic. It's hygroscopic, meaning it draws water out of the invading bacteria, killing them. It also creates a sterile, protective barrier against further contamination. Next, he calls for a truly quirky tidbit of your medicine. He asks for a piece of bread that has gone moldy. He takes the bread, crumbles it, and applies the greenish-blue, fuzzy mold directly into your wound, packing it in before covering the whole mess with a fresh linen bandage. It seems strange, even disgusting, but the authority of the SWNW is absolute. You are unaware that you have just become the recipient of a primitive, accidental form of antibiotic therapy. The penicillium mold growing on that stale loaf is waging a chemical war on the bacteria invading your body, a discovery that your descendants in the distant future will hail as a medical miracle. With the physical remedy applied, the real battle begins. The Senoway must now drive out the demon. He is no longer just a physician. He is an exorcist. He begins a loud, rhythmic incantation, his voice filled with power and authority. He addresses the disease directly, as if it were a person in the room. "Oh, demon, who resides in the limb of this patient, I am the one who commands you. I hold the sanction of the gods. Get back, you who would cause decay. Flee from this sanctified body." He might hold a special amulet or a wand. He might draw a magical circle around you on the floor. The spell is not a hopeful prayer. It is a direct magical assault, a command backed by divine authority. The honey and moldy bread are merely there to clean up the physical damage left in the demon's wake. The true healing comes from this spiritual warfare. This approach is used for all manner of ailments. If you had a persistent cough, the senwai might have you inhale the fumes of heated herbs and minerals while reciting a spell to banish the spirit of the winter cold. For a stomach ache, the remedy might be a foul-tasting concoction of herbs, mixed with, shockingly, animal excrement. This seems horrifyingly counterintuitive, but some scientists now theorize that the microflora present in some animal dung could have had antibiotic properties. A headache might be treated by rubbing a paste of clay and herbs on the forehead while an incantation commands the pain demon to exit through the skull. Despite this reliance on magic, your physicians possessed an impressive and practical knowledge of the human body. Their understanding of anatomy, gleaned from the sacred and meticulous art of mummification, was unparalleled in the ancient world. They could identify the major organs. Though they sometimes misunderstood their functions, they believed, for example, that the heart, not the brain, was the seat of intelligence and emotion, which is why the heart was carefully preserved during mummification, while the brain was unceremoniously scrambled and discarded through the nose. They were also skilled surgeons, capable of setting broken bones with incredible precision, using padded splints that are functionally identical to those used today. They could drain abscesses with bronze knives, and even perform simple operations to remove superficial cysts or tumors. You lie on your mat, feverish and weak, your leg wrapped in a poultice of miracle mold and god food. The powerful words of the SNOE still echoing in the small room. You are in the hands of a system that sees no line between the body and the soul, between a chemical reaction and a divine intervention. You are being treated by a warrior priest who is fighting on two fronts at once, using every weapon at his disposal, from a lump of moldy bread to the sacred names of the gods themselves, to pull you back from the brink. And as you drift into a fitful sleep, you can only pray that it is enough. You are drifting, lying on your mat, caught in the throes of a fever. The world loses its sharp edges, time blurs, The boundaries between the waking world and the dream world, the duat, feel thin, almost transparent. The incantations of the echo in your mind, mingling with the worried whispers of your family and the strange, vivid images that bloom behind your closed eyes. You feel the throbbing pain in your leg, but you also feel it as a malevolent presence, a pocket of chaos in the ordered landscape of your own body. How did the poison from one small spot travel to your head to make it burn? How can a wound in your leg cause your spirit to feel so weak? In this fevered state, you contemplate the mysteries of your own form, guided by the strange logic your culture has developed over millennia. You do not picture your body as a collection of discrete organs. Instead, you envision it as a miniature version of Egypt itself, a fertile land irrigated by a network of channels, or Met-2. This is the mainstream historical fact that underpins all of your medical beliefs. The heart, you believe, is the center of this system, like a great reservoir or the source of the Nile. From your heart, dozens of these Metu branch out to every part of your body: your eyes, your ears, your fingertips, your bowels. These channels don't just carry blood, they carry everything: air, saliva, tears, urine, and semen. They also carry your thoughts, your emotions, and your soul. When you are healthy, the channels are clear, and everything flows in harmony, just as the canals bring life-giving water to the fields. Sickness, therefore, is a blockage. A demon, an evil spirit, or some foul substance has created a dam somewhere in your system, and the poison is backing up, polluting everything. This is how the sickness in your leg can poison your entire being. This worldview explains some of the most quirky and specific tidbits of your medical practice. You remember when your sister and her husband were trying to conceive. That swan performed a test on her, not by examining her womb, but by placing a clove of garlic in her vagina. The next morning, he smelled her breath. Because he could smell garlic, he declared her Metu to be open and clear, and that she was capable of conceiving. To a modern mind, this is absurd. But in your world, it makes perfect, logical sense. If the channels are unobstructed, the potent essence of the garlic is free to travel throughout the entire system, from her womb all the way to her mouth. It's a test of whole-body connectivity. You've also heard tales of a frightening condition that can afflict women: the wandering womb. It is believed that the uterus, if unhappy or unfed by a pregnancy, can become dislodged and travel upwards in the body, pressing against other channels. If it presses on the channels leading from the heart to the lungs, it might cause shortness of breath and anxiety. If it presses higher, it might cause dizziness or fainting. The treatment is logical. You must lure the womb back to its proper place. The physician would apply foul-smelling substances, like burnt rags, for the woman to smell, driving the womb downwards, while simultaneously applying sweet-smelling perfumes and incense to her lower body, enticing it back to its rightful home. Even your dreams, especially in this feverish state, are considered vital diagnostic tools. When the Swen returns, he will not just check your wound. He will ask, "What have you dreamed?" Dreams are not random firings of a tired brain. They are messages. They are windows into the state of your body and your soul. To dream of a feast might be a good omen, suggesting health and vitality. To dream of falling into darkness could signify a serious illness related to the liver. A dream of a talking cat, an animal sacred to the goddess Bastet, might be a message from the goddess herself, either of warning or of reassurance. Your physician is also a dream interpreter, using your nocturnal visions to map the spiritual conflict happening inside you. This leads to a profound scholarly debate for future generations who will study your papyri when your medical texts speak of a demon of pain or the breath of an angry god. Are they speaking literally or metaphorically? When a diagnosis says a patient is suffering because a dead spirit is haunting them, is this a literal belief in ghosts as pathogens? Or is it a sophisticated, pre-scientific way of describing a phenomenon you can't see? but whose effects are undeniably real. Is demon simply your word for what future cultures will call a germ? Is the wrath of Sekhmet a poetic way of describing the burning inflammation of a deadly plague? The debate exists because your culture does not draw a sharp, clean line between the symbolic and the literal. A symbol does not just represent a thing, it participates in its reality. The small wax figurine of your enemy is your enemy in a form you can control. The hieroglyphic sign for life, the Ankh, doesn't just mean life. It contains a particle of the divine concept of life itself. Therefore, when the SWNW performs an incantation, he is not just trying to make you feel better through some kind of power of positive thinking. He is actively restructuring reality through the power of Heka, or magic. The spoken word has the power to create and destroy. His spell is a weapon, as real and potent as the bronze knife he might use for surgery. The physical remedy, the honey, the moldy bread treats, the earthly manifestation of the disease. The spell attacks its supernatural source. Both are absolutely essential. This logic permeates every aspect of your medicine. It explains why a person's name, and particularly their mother's name, is so crucial in a healing spell. Your name isn't a mere label. It is a core component of your identity, your Ren. To know and speak the true name is to have power over the thing itself. The mother's name is used to create an unbreakable link, as maternity is a certainty. It ensures the healing magic finds its precise target and doesn't go astray. It is the spiritual equivalent of a home address. As the sun sets, you feel a subtle shift. The intense heat of your fever begins to recede, replaced by a cleansing sweat. The throbbing in your leg lessens to a dull ache. The world begins to sharpen again. You don't know what worked, the poultice, the spell, or the will of the gods. To you, they are all facets of the same gem, a single, unified act of healing. Your beliefs about the wandering womb and the diagnostic power of garlic are not strange to you. They are part of an intricate and internally consistent system for understanding the universe, a system where magic is the physics. The gods are the governing force, and your own body is a small, sacred map of the cosmos. As the fever recedes and your strength slowly returns, you spend many hours simply lying on your mat, observing the small world within your home. A gecko, a tiny, almost prehistoric creature, skitters across the mud brick wall, hunting for insects. A small, tawny cat, which adopted your family months ago, stretches languidly in a patch of sun, its eyes slitted in contentment. A few ibis birds, with their impossibly long, curved beaks, wade through the shallow canal just outside your door. To a visitor from the future, these are just creatures, part of the scenery. But to you, they are much more. In your world, the divine does not live in some distant, abstract heaven. It walks, flies, and crawls all around you. Your world is alive with gods, and they wear the faces of animals. You don't see a mere lizard. On the wall, you see a small symbol of agility and survival. You don't see just a bird. You see the earthly manifestation, the living Ba of Thoth, the great god of wisdom and writing, the very same god who authored the medical texts the SN used to save you. And the cat purring in the sun is not a simple pet. She is a vessel for the power of Bastet, the fierce protectress of the home, the slayer of snakes and scorpions, the goddess of fertility and joy. This is the mainstream historical fact that defines your relationship with the natural world. You live in a state of zoolatry, the worship of gods in animal form. You do not worship the cat itself, but you revere the divine essence that has chosen to inhabit that particular form. To harm that cat would be to insult the goddess herself, a crime so severe it could be punished by death. Your entire pantheon is a divine menagerie. The sky belongs to Horus, the falcon god, whose piercing eyes can see everything. His sacred form is the falcon, a master predator whose speed and power represent the divine right of the pharaoh to rule. The desolate edges of the desert, the places where you bury your dead, are patrolled by jackals. And so, the jackal became the form of Anubis, the solemn god who guides the souls of the dead, the inventor of mummification. The terrifying power of the Nile, its raw, unpredictable strength, is embodied in the crocodile, the sacred animal of the god Sobek. You fear the crocodile, but you also offer it prayers, asking it to ensure a fertile flood and protect you from the dangers of the river. Even the lowliest of creatures can hold immense cosmic significance. The scarab beetle, which you see every day, tirelessly rolling a ball of dung across the sand, is the earthly image of the great god, Khepri. Just as the beetle rolls its sphere, Khepri rolls the sun across the sky each day, pushing it out of the darkness of the underworld at dawn. The beetle laying its eggs within this ball of dung, from which new life emerges, is a powerful symbol of spontaneous creation and rebirths. You wear an amulet shaped like a scarab beetle for this very reason, hoping to partake in its regenerative power. This intense focus on animals is the subject of a deep scholarly debate. Why did your sophisticated civilization, with its complex engineering and bureaucracy, cling to what outsiders saw as primitive animal worship? Some future historians will argue that it was a cultural survival, a remnant of prehistoric animistic and totemic beliefs, where tribal clans identified with a particular animal spirit. They will see it as a less evolved form of religion compared to the purely anthropomorphic gods of the Greeks or the abstract monotheism that would come later. But other scholars will argue for a more complex and profound theology. They will suggest that you see animals as being, in some ways, more perfect than humans. A man can be swayed by greed, fear, or lies. He can act against Mat, the divine order. But a falcon is always, and perfectly a falcon. An ibis is always, an ibis. They flawlessly embody the divine attributes assigned to them by the creator gods. They are pure, unchanging, and direct conduits to the divine, free from the moral chaos of human life. They are not primitive gods. They are perfect intermediaries. This belief system fuels a massive, and quite quirky, religious industry, the creation of animal mummies. If your leg has now healed, you might wish to give thanks to Thoth, whose wisdom guided the SNY. To do so, you might make a pilgrimage to a great temple, like the one at Saqqara. There, you would enter a sprawling complex dedicated to the god. Priests would sell you an appropriate votive offering. You would purchase a clay pot, sealed at the top. Inside is a carefully mummified ibis, bred and prepared by the temple priests for this exact purpose. You would leave this offering at the temple, a tangible prayer, a message delivered to the god via his sacred creature. This was not a small-scale operation. Archaeologists have uncovered vast underground catacombs at Saqqara, a subterranean city of the dead for animals. They have found galleries packed floor to ceiling with literally millions of mummified ibises, each in its own pot. There are similar catacombs for falcons, for cats, for crocodiles, even for the baboons also associated with Thoth. It was an industrial-scale enterprise, a massive economy fueled by the breeding, killing, mummifying, and selling of sacred animals to faithful pilgrims. In a strange twist, modern CT scans have revealed that a significant percentage of these votive mummies were fakes, containing only a single leg bone and a few feathers, or sometimes just a bundle. as the fever recedes and your strength slowly returns. You spend many hours simply lying on your mat, observing the small world within your home. A gecko, a tiny, almost prehistoric creature, skitters across the mud brick wall, hunting for insects. A small, tawny cat, which adopted your family months ago, stretches languidly in a patch of sun, its eyes slitted in contentment. A few ibis birds, with their impossibly long, curved beaks, wade through the shallow canal just outside your door. To a visitor from the future, these are just creatures, part of the scenery. But to you, they are much more. In your world, the divine does not live in some distant, abstract heaven. It walks, flies, and crawls all around you. Your world is alive with gods, and they wear the faces of animals. You don't see a mere lizard. On the wall, you see a small symbol of agility and survival. You don't see just a bird. You see the earthly manifestation, the living Ba of Thoth, the great god of wisdom and writing, the very same god who authored the medical texts the SN used to save you. And the cat purring in the sun is not a simple pet. She is a vessel for the power of Bastet, the fierce protectress of the home, the slayer of snakes and scorpions, the goddess of fertility and joy. This is the mainstream historical fact that defines your relationship with the natural world. You live in a state of zoolatry, the worship of gods in animal form. You do not worship the cat itself, but you revere the divine essence that has chosen to inhabit that particular form. To harm that cat would be to insult the goddess herself, a crime so severe it could be punished by death. Your entire pantheon is a divine menagerie. The sky belongs to Horus, the falcon god, whose piercing eyes can see everything. His sacred form is the falcon, a master predator, whose speed and power represent the divine right of the pharaoh to rule. The desolate edges of the desert, the places where you bury your dead, are patrolled by jackals. And so, the jackal became the form of Anubis, the solemn god who guides the souls of the dead, the inventor of mummification, the terrifying power of the Nile. Its raw, unpredictable strength is embodied in the crocodile, the sacred animal of the god Sobek. You fear the crocodile, but you also offer it prayers, asking it to ensure a fertile flood and protect you from the dangers of the river Dot. Even the lowliest of creatures can hold immense cosmic significance. The scarab beetle, which you see every day tirelessly rolling a ball of dung across the sand, is the earthly image of the great god, Khepri. Just as the beetle rolls its sphere, Khepri rolls the sun across the sky each day, pushing it out of the darkness of the underworld at dawn. The beetle, laying its eggs within this ball of dung, from which new life emerges, is a powerful symbol of spontaneous creation and rebirth. You wear an amulet shaped like a scarab beetle for this very reason, hoping to partake in its regenerative power. This intense focus on animals is the subject of a deep scholarly debate. Why did your sophisticated civilization, with its complex engineering and bureaucracy, cling to what outsiders saw as primitive animal worship? Some future historians will argue that it was a cultural survival, a remnant of prehistoric animistic and totemic beliefs, where tribal clans identified with a particular animal spirit. They will see it as a less evolved form of religion compared to the purely anthropomorphic gods of the Greeks or the abstract monotheism that would come later. But other scholars will argue for a more complex and profound theology. They will suggest that you see animals as being, in some ways, more perfect than humans. A man can be swayed by greed, fear, or lies. He can act against Mat, the divine order. But a falcon is always, and perfectly, a falcon. An ibis is always an ibis. They flawlessly embody the divine attributes assigned to them by the creator gods. They are pure, unchanging, and direct conduits to the divine, free from the moral chaos of human life. They are not primitive gods. They are perfect intermediaries. This belief system fuels a massive, and quite quirky, religious industry, the creation of animal mummies. If your leg has now healed, you might wish to give thanks to Thoth, whose wisdom guided the Essen way. To do so, you might make a pilgrimage to a great temple, like the one at Saqqara. There, you would enter a sprawling complex dedicated to the god. Priests would sell you an appropriate votive offering. You would purchase a clay pot, sealed at the top. Inside is a carefully mummified ibis, bred and prepared by the temple priests for this exact purpose. You would leave this to be judged in the Hall of Two Truths. To have your heart weighed against the feather of Mat is the ultimate goal. But a spirit cannot be judged without a body. Your soul, your unique combination of Ka, life force, and Ba personality, needs a permanent physical anchor, a home to return to each night after journeying through the underworld. If your mortal body decays and turns to dust, your soul becomes a homeless wanderer, doomed to fade into the terrifying oblivion of the second death. And so, you must ensure your body is preserved for eternity. This is not a luxury, it is a spiritual necessity. The process of mummification is the most important journey you will ever undertake. A sacred and complex transformation from mortal flesh to divine, eternal vessel. This entire practice is at the heart of a scholarly debate about its origins. Did the belief arise purely from the myth of Osiris, a desire to emulate the actions of Isis when she preserved her husband's body, thus making him the first mummy? Or did it have a more practical, observational beginning? Your earliest ancestors buried their dead in simple, shallow pits in the desert. The hot, dry sand would naturally desiccate the bodies, creating lifelike preserved husks. Did your people witness this natural preservation and then develop a sophisticated technology to replicate and improve upon it, with the myth of Osiris arising later to explain and sanctify the practice? You do not know the answer. You only know that, if you wish to live forever, your body must endure. When your last breath is drawn, your family begins the process. They do not mourn in sackcloth and ashes just yet. There is urgent, holy work to be done. Your body is carried across the Nile to the West Bank, the land of the setting sun, the land of the dead. There, it is brought to the Wabbit, the place of purification. This is the embalmer's workshop, a place of strange smells of spices, resins, and death, but it is sacred ground. The men who work here are not simple craftsmen. They are Hemaka, priests of the funerary cult. The chief embalmer, known as the overseer of the mysteries, is a man of immense religious authority. During the ritual, he may even wear a carved jackal mask, a direct impersonation of the god Anubis, who watches over the sacred process. Through his hands, the god himself is transforming you. First, your body is laid out on a slanted limestone slab. It is washed with water from the sacred Nile, and then rinsed with palm wine, which acts as a mild antiseptic. This is a ritual purification, cleansing your earthly form in preparation for its divine transformation. Then, the true work, the gruesome but necessary stage of preservation, begins. The first step is the removal of the brain. You believe the heart is the seat of intelligence and consciousness. The brain is considered little more than useless cranial stuffing. An embalmer takes a long bronze rod with a hooked or coiled end. He forces it up through one of your nostrils, puncturing the thin ethmoid bone at the back of your nasal cavity to enter the skull. He then begins to whisk. This is a quirky, yet macabre tidbit of the process. He violently scrambles the soft brain tissue into a semi-liquid state. Then, your body is tilted, and the liquefied brain is drained out through your nose. Any remaining pieces are pulled out with the hook. The now empty skull is rinsed out with palm wine. Next, the internal organs, which are full of moisture and would cause the body to decay rapidly, must be removed. Another priest, holding a sacred knife made of razor-sharp obsidian, makes a long incision down the left flank of your abdomen. Through this single cut, the embalmer reaches inside and removes the stomach, the liver, the lungs, and the intestines. It is a messy, bloody affair, but it is done with practiced, ritualistic precision. One organ, however, is deliberately and carefully left inside: your heart, your IB. It is the most important part of you. It is the vessel of your intelligence, your personality, your memory, and your conscience. It is the witness to all your deeds, good and bad. It is the organ that will be weighed against the feather of Matt. To remove it would be to rob you of your chance at eternal life. The organs that were removed are not discarded. They too are essential for your wholeness in the afterlife. They are washed with palm wine, and each one is placed in its own special container, a canopic jar. There are 4 jars, and each is protected by one of the 4 sons of the great god Horus. Imsiti, who has a human head, guards your liver. Duamutiv, with the head of a jackal, protects your stomach. Hapi, who has the head of a baboon, watches over your lungs. And Kabesanuf, the falcon-headed sun, guards your intestines. These 4 jars will be placed in a special chest and buried with you. Now, your empty body cavity is rinsed again with wine and fragrant spices. Then comes the most crucial stage of all, the secret to eternal preservation. The embalmers bring in great quantities of a special, naturally occurring salt, natron. It is a mixture of sodium bicarbonate and sodium chloride, a powerful desiccant. They pack your empty torso with temporary bundles of natron-soaked linen, and then they cover your entire body, inside and out, with a huge mound of the dry salt, burying you completely, and there you will lie for 40 days. During this time, the natron will ruthlessly pull every drop of moisture from your skin, muscles, and bones. It is a slow, chemical process of desiccation that halts the process of decay entirely. When the 40 days are over, the natron is brushed away. What remains is a dry, shrunken, leathery husk, a skeletal figure of darkened skin stretched over bone. It is you, but profoundly and permanently changed. You are now a timeless, incorruptible effigy. The remaining 30 days of the 70-day mummification process are dedicated to the final, elaborate wrapping. The temporary packing is removed from your torso, and the cavity is filled with clean linen, sawdust, or other materials to restore a more lifelike shape. Your skin is anointed with a series of precious oils and resins to make it more supple and to give it a pleasant, godlike smell. Then, the wrapping begins. It is an art form. Hundreds of yards of fine linen, torn into strips, are used. The process is meticulous. Each finger and each toe is wrapped individually before the hand and foot are wrapped as a whole. Then the limbs, and finally the torso and head. With each layer, priests recite incantations and spells, binding magical protection into the very fabric of your wrappings. Sacred amulets are tucked within the layers at key locations: the ankh, the symbol of life; the jed pillar, for stability; and most importantly, the heart scarab, a large beetle-shaped amulet placed directly over your heart, inscribed with a spell from the Book of the Dead, urging your heart not to speak out against you during the final judgment. Finally, when the wrapping is complete, you are a tightly bound, cocoon-like figure. A painted funerary mask is placed over your head. For a common person like you, it would be made of cartonnage layers of linen, or papyrus stiffened with plaster and painted with an idealized serene face. It is not a portrait of how you looked in life, but an image of you as a divine being, your face now perfect, and you are in the dark, a profound, silent, and absolute darkness within your coffin. Your physical body, now a hardened, eternal vessel, is inert, but you are not gone. A new form of consciousness is dawning, the awakening of your Ba, your spirit personality, depicted as a bird with a human head. You are aware of your mummified form, and you are aware of something else, a long, slender object tucked securely within your linen wrappings. It is a papyrus scroll, your most vital possession for the journey to come. To future generations, it will be known as the Book of the Dead, but to you, It is the spells for coming forth by day. This is not a book to be read for pleasure. It is your map, your passport, your magical weapon, and your divine GPS for navigating the terrifying landscape of the underworld. This mainstream historical fact of a personalized funerary text is central to your hope for an afterlife. A wealthy noble might be buried with a magnificent, lavishly illustrated scroll, every spell perfectly rendered by the finest scribes. Your family, having spent most of their savings on the mummification itself, could only afford a more modest version, with fewer spells and simpler drawings. But its power is no less crucial. Within its delicate fibers are the words of power, the sacred knowledge that will allow you to overcome the trials ahead. Without it, you would be utterly lost, and the trials are many. For you must now journey through the Duat. The Duat is not hell, but it is a place of immense danger and profound mystery. It is a realm that mirrors the landscape of Egypt, with rivers, fields, and caverns, but it is populated by gods, demons, and the spirits of the dead. As you begin your journey, you will face a series of gates, or pylons, that block your path to the Hall of Judgment. Each gate is guarded by a terrifying entity with a grotesque form and a fearsome name. The guardian of the seventh gate, for instance, is called he who lives on maggots. To pass, you cannot use force. You must demonstrate your spiritual knowledge. You must address the gatekeeper by its correct, secret name, proving you are a worthy and initiated soul. Your scroll is your cheat sheet. It provides you with the names of the guardians, the gates themselves, and the correct words of passage. It is a system of divine passwords, and your eternal fate depends on knowing them. Beyond the gates lie other horrors, and your scroll is a veritable armory of defensive magic. This is where the quirky, and often bizarre tidbits of your faith become matters of life or death. The great serpent daemon Apep, the embodiment of Isfet, and the eternal enemy of the sun god Ra, may try to swallow your soul, but your scroll contains, spell 33, an incantation for repelling all snakes. A crocodile demon might try to steal your magic, but you have a spell to pacify it. Two of the most visceral fears expressed in the texts are the fear of being forced to eat your own excrement and drink your own urine in the underworld, and the fear of being decapitated, leaving your soul headless and incomplete for eternity. Your scroll contains specific spells, such as spell 53, to ensure you are provided with proper bread and beer, not filth, and spell 43, for not letting a man's head be cut off from him in the realm of the dead. Every imaginable terror has a corresponding magical solution written on your papyrus. But the spells are not merely defensive. They grant you incredible powers of transformation. You are no longer bound to a single, mortal form. If you face a lake of fire, your scroll provides you with spell 77, allowing you to transform your ba into a great golden falcon, soaring high above the flames. To be reborn, you can use spell 83 to become a Benu bird, the magnificent phoenix that is the very symbol of resurrection. If you need to navigate the watery canals of the Duat, you can become a crocodile, the master of the river. You can even become a lotus, to partake in its divine essence of creation. These transformations are your superpowers, allowing you to adapt to and master the surreal, ever-shifting landscape of the underworld. This very nature of the scroll has led to a fascinating scholarly debate. How, exactly, were these spells meant to be used? Did your Ba, your spirit self, literally read the scroll in the afterlife, reciting the spells as needed, like a traveler consulting a guidebook? Or was the mere presence of the scroll, with its inherent magical power, enough to automatically protect you? Some evidence points to the former. Many scrolls show wear and tear, suggesting they were handled and read by the living before being placed in the tomb, perhaps as a form of study for the journey ahead. But many other scrolls, especially cheaper ones, are filled with errors, garbled text, and sloppy illustrations. This suggests to some scholars that, for many people, the physical object itself was the key. It was a magical battery, and as long as it was with you, its protective power would radiate outwards, whether you could decipher the text or not. It's possible both were true, that the ideal was to know the spells, but the physical scroll offered a baseline of protection for all. The ultimate purpose of this perilous journey and this magical guidebook is revealed in its ancient name, the spells for coming forth by day. Your goal is not to stay in the do-what, nor is it even to live forever in the darkness of your tomb. Your ultimate desire is to be judged worthy, to be vindicated in the Hall of Mat, and to be granted the freedom to come forth by day. This means you can leave your tomb each morning as the sun rises. Your boss spirit can fly out into the world of the living, visit your favorite places, and, most importantly, join the sun god Ra in his magnificent solar bark, traveling with the gods across the sky. Then, as evening falls, you can safely return to the protection of your mummified body and your tomb, ready to receive the offerings left by your family. This freedom of movement between the worlds of the living and the dead is the very definition of a blessed afterlife. Lying in the silent dark, your spirit, your Ba, begins to stir. You are no longer just a body, you are a traveler, and in your hands, you clutch your map. Armed with the sacred words and the secret names, you prepare to face the guardians. The first gate looms ahead, and you know its name. Your great journey has begun. Section 14. You have passed the final gate. The last demonic guardian has been pacified by the secret names whispered from your soul, guided by the spells on your papyrus. The darkness of the Duat gives way to a vast, silent light. You have arrived. You are standing in the Hall of Two Truths, the chamber of judgment, where your entire existence will be weighed and measured. The air is heavy with an ancient and overwhelming power. The hall is impossibly large, its ceiling lost in shadow, supported by rows of mighty columns. At the far end, seated upon a throne of burnished gold and lapis lazuli, is the great god Osiris, Lord of the Dead, King of the West. His skin is the green of resurrection, his eyes hold the wisdom of eternity, and in his hands he grasps the crook and the flail, the symbols of divine kingship. You are not alone. Lining the walls of the great hall are 42 terrifying figures, the assessors of Mat. They are the divine jury, a host of gods and goddesses, some with human heads, some with the heads of serpents, crocodiles, and hawks. Each one is the master of a specific sin, and each one is staring directly at you, their ancient eyes probing the depths of your soul. Before this divine tribunal, you are impossibly small, a single, trembling spirit about to account for your life. Before the final measurement can be taken, you must first declare your purity. This is the quirky, yet profoundly important tidbit of your judgment, the negative confession. It is not a confession of what you have done, but a powerful, ritualistic declaration of what you have not done. Your boss spirit, guided by the knowledge from your funerary scroll, begins to speak, your voice a tiny echo in the vast, silent hall. You must address each of the 42 assessors by their correct name and title, and deny the sin they oversee. O White Oaf Stride, who comes forth from Heliopolis, I have not committed evil. O Fire Embracer, who comes forth from Karaha, I have not robbed. O Breaker of Bones, who comes forth from Heraclepolis, I have not told lies. O Eater, who comes forth from the Chamber of 30, I have not stolen food. O he whose face is behind him, who comes forth from the Cavern of Wrong, I have not engaged in deceit. The litany continues. I have not made anyone weep. I have not been arrogant. I have not polluted the water. I have not been deaf to the words of truth. With each declaration, you are demonstrating your knowledge of Matt and asserting that you lived your life in accordance with it. It is a terrifying oral examination, where a single misspoken name or a moment of hesitation could signal your guilt. When your declaration is complete, the central and most dramatic moment of your entire existence arrives. Anubis, the jackal-headed god of embalming, steps forward. His movements are graceful and precise. He gently takes you by the hand and leads you to the center of the hall, where a magnificent golden scale stands, its balance arm poised and waiting. With the utmost care, Anubis reaches into your spiritual form and removes your IB, your heart. It glows with a faint light, a vessel containing every memory, every secret, every choice of your mortal life. He places it on one of the golden pans of the scale. Then, from the headdress of the goddess Mat, who watches the proceedings with serene impartiality, Anubis takes the single, white ostrich feather of truth. It is weightless, perfect, and pure. He places it on the opposite pan. This is the ultimate moment of psychostasia, the weighing of the soul. A mainstream historical fact depicted in countless papyri and tomb paintings. An unbearable silence descends upon the hall. Everything stops. You watch, your non-existent breath caught in your non-existent throat. On one side, the entire moral weight of your life. On the other, the weight of perfect truth. Standing ready with his scribe's palette, his Thoth, the ivy-setted god of wisdom, prepared to record the final verdict. And crouched eagerly beside the scales is the monster Ammit, the devourer of the dead. Her crocodile jaws, lion's mane, and hippopotamus body, a grotesque combination of everything you fear. She watches the scale, drooling slightly, for she will be your executioner if you fail. The balance arm quivers. It sways once, twice, then it comes to rest. There are two possible outcomes. If your heart is heavy, weighed down by a life of isfit of lies, cruelty, and chaos, it will sink, outweighed by the feather. A terrible gasp would fill the hall. Thoth would record your failure. Osiris would turn his face from you. Ammit, the devourer, would not hesitate. She would lunge forward, her massive jaws snapping shut around your heart, consuming the very essence of your being. In that instant, you would cease to exist, not just dead, but annihilated, your name erased from the cosmos for all time. It is the second death, the ultimate end. But your life, for all its small struggles, was lived in accordance with Matt. Your heart is light. The scales balance perfectly. A collective sigh of relief seems to ripple through the divine assembly. Thoth looks to the judges and announces the verdict for all to hear. The heart of the deceased has been weighed, and it is found to be true. He is Makero, true of voice, vindicated. This entire process, however, raises a difficult scholarly debate. Was this a true moral reckoning, or was it a ritual that could be passed through magical knowledge alone? The presence of the heart scarab amulet, placed over your mummy's heart, is inscribed with a spell that famously implores, "O my heart, do not stand up as a witness against me. Do not oppose me in the tribunal. Do not be hostile to me in the presence of the keeper of the balance." This sounds like magical witness tampering. Does this mean you could live a less than perfect life and still hope to pass if you had the right spells and amulets? Or was the judgment more nuanced? Perhaps the ability to procure the correct scroll and perform the ritual correctly was, in itself, a sign of a life blessed by the gods, a life of Matt. You do not care for such debates. You only know the overwhelming relief that floods your soul. You are Makero. The terror of annihilation vanishes, replaced by a profound and gentle peace. The falcon-headed god Horus, the dutiful son, now steps forward and takes you by the hand. He leads you past the scale, past the disappointed Amit, and presents you to his father. You stand before the throne of Osiris. The great god nods his acceptance. You have been judged, and you have been found worthy. You have earned your place in his eternal kingdom. The gates to paradise are opening before you.